The other thing about getting rid of your government is you can't just say, well, the limits of the government are the limits of the formal government. You have to say, well, what is this actually? And it includes a lot of things that are called NGOs, things that are called universities, things that are funded by the state. It's a very, very large system, and it all needs to be destroyed.
Excuse me?
There's a lot of talented Americans who actually know how to run things and make things work and are generalists. And you can just get these people, put them in a position of responsibility, and have them do their thing. And finally, you need a CEO. And a national CEO is what's called a dictator. It's the same thing. There's no difference between a CEO and a dictator. If Americans want to change their government, they're going to have to get over their dictatorphobia.
They're gonna have to get over their dictatorphobia. One person controls the economy of an entire country. One person. He calls them a CEO. Sounds like communism to me. Look at him, so cool, out in the woods. Look at my leather jacket. Yeah, I want to end your 248-year-old Democratic Republic for a dictatorship, but check me out in this jacket that's too big for me. A genius of a man working on his computer in the middle of the woods with the same confused look he has on his face that my dog has when I sit her down and try to explain to her the reasons we don't on the carpet. This guy must be a Bernie supporter, a CEO of a country. Gotta get over your dictatorphobia. He must be AOC's inspiration. He must be the person Sarah Palin said Obama was palling around with. Is that too old of a reference by now? I don't know. This guy's name is Curtis Yarvin. He's talking about dictatorphobia in the United States of America. America in the year 2024. You wouldn't want me saying that in these parts, Curtis. Oh, no. I got 1776 written on my sleeve. You're talking about a dictator. I'm part of the 3%ers. That means I got 3% of a penis in my pants. It's like an iceberg, right? So, like, when I sit down, most of it goes inside here, and then 3% sticks out. Watch out, Jack. Don't eat my 3% iceberg penis. Curtis Yarvin, who before this legendary photo shoot had not left his basement in a decade. The same people who will cry, don't step on my snack. Don't step on my snack. Even the boot that steps on the snack is telling you not to step on the snack. Spider-Man pointing gif on that one. These completely self-aware, 1776, 3% of the tip show, and don't step on snake. They have no place for Curtis Yarvin. Curtis Yarvin, whatever, in a freedom-loving, patriotic country.
Our leaders right now are so corrupt and so vile that if you assimilate into their culture, you're assimilating into like garbage liberal elite culture. You're not assimilating into traditional American culture. And so this is a tough pickle for me. I don't even know what the right answer is here, because you can't teach these things. You can't teach that we live in a great country if the leaders are actively aligned against it. So almost the thing that you need to do, step one in the process, is to totally replace, like rip out like a tumor, the current American leadership class,
out like a tumor,
and then reinstall some sense of American, political religion.
Said something that I would like to zero down on. How do we effectively, quote, rip out the disgusting leadership class?
Say it.
Oh, man.
Say it.
I mean,
because let me expand on that just a second. Because and I'm going to give you a little cover here, because it's not just
negative charisma.
I mean, obviously elections. That's one thing. Okay. But unfortunately, this evil leadership class has already taken over all of our institutions. Current pipeline is to turn them into those people that we just called evil and disgusting. How do we, aside from elections, how do we rip out this leadership class? So these institutions are corrupted and rotted to the core. This elite ideology is everywhere and in all the things. What other options do we have besides voting them out, which we're seeing is ineffectual?
What other options?
Yeah. So again, this is like a tough question, but this is maybe the question that confronts us right now. There's this guy, Curtis Yarvin, who's written about some of these things.
The guy in the woods. The guy in the woods, the Republican ticket. This vice president is on the ticket, right? In one of the longest democratic republics. He subscribes. You just heard the conversation. How do we get him out there without elections? Very casually saying it. He subscribes to the writings of the man in the woods saying, you and me, Americans, 1776, have to get over our dictator phobia. Rip out democracy like it is a tumor. Right? It's a republic. It's a republic. I saw it on a meme. We're not a democracy. It's a republic. Okay, rip out the republic like a tumor. There, you happy, Scooter? You people are morons. And what makes it even worse is when you become pendactic morons. This is who they're voting for. And I'm starting to think the only useful thing about that number on their sleeve, 1376, these alpha males right here, the only useful thing that 1776 means to them is to help them remember the code to unlock their iPhones. And you know 98% of the people that look like this have 1776 as the code to unlock their phones. If you ever take it, that would be the first thing I would try. What was my code? Just look at your sleeve, Scooter. Oh, yeah. 1776. I felt like it had another meaning. But you're right. That is just to open my phone. Let's start the show.
Trump is the new Adolf.
Welcome to the Chud Report. I'm your host, MJ. Forewarning. I guess you could tell anyway. YouTube already tells you. This is going to be a longer episode, all right? So I'm sorry about that. But if it's your first time here, the episodes usually aren't this long. I'm not Star Wars girl who was mad about that ride that YouTube tricked me into watching for 4 hours. I'm not her. So I usually don't do episodes this long. But if you do end up enjoying it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe. If you hate it, please downvote it. Get us out of your algorithm, Chud. We don't like being here. But the reason I'm making this episode, which is way too long, way too much of me, it always confounded me as to why men like this, right here, men like this, whose only source of power is derived from unmeasurable wealth, and then why would someone like that? Elon Musk got picked on till he was 18 years old in school. Severely picked on, right? His dad even picked on him. And then his dad tried to buy off the bullies. All right? This guy's not making it without his billions. He's not your alpha male. So why would he want to destroy a system? And the only reason he's able to wield his symbolic phallus. And I'm sorry for that visual. I did say symbolic, though. I mean, what's the count even up to now, right? It's like 23 Nobel Prize winning economists have backed Kamala's plan. And to anyone that might be tuning in from my hometown, my small hometown, this isn't the Nobel Prize that we have yearly. You know, that prize involves who can screw a cow the quietest without setting off the bell on its neck. The Nobel Prize, right? The winner gets a case of Natty Light. This is the Nobel Prize named after Alfred Nobel, right? Established in 1968 from Sweden's central bank to honor significant contributions to the field of economics. Just in case anyone was out there was confused. This is the Nobel Prize, and this is the Nobel Prize. By all metrics, economists, Wall Street Journal, right? That right-wing newspaper of Rupert Murdoch says Trump is going to jack up taxes on the lower classes. Why would you jack up taxes on the lower classes? Especially us finally coming out of this inflation. He's going to jack up taxes on the lower middle classes. He's going to jack up taxes on the middle classes. He's even going to jack up taxes on the upper middle classes. And I bet you can't guess who's going to get earth-shattering, economy-shattering tax breaks. Billionaires. Did anyone out there guess that? If anyone out there guessed it, you win a new Cadillac. Right? I mean, who would have thunk? Promising tariffs, which he still doesn't understand is a tax. on the American people, all while promising to deport 20 million people from the workforce. I mean, you don't even have to have taken an economics class, not even Economics 101, to understand that this is the recipe to crash the economy.
Called the Trump trade in the markets. Do you know what that is? The Trump trade is very simple. People are betting that your policies are going to drive up debt, they're going to drive up inflation, so they're going to drive up interest rates.
These are all
the
Republicans
investors
telling
wrong?
you this.
So looking at the fact, you are making all these promises. Latest one was car loans. You're flooding the thing with giving giveaways.
But we're going to grow.
I was actually quite kind
We're
to you.
already
I
growing,
used
dummy.
7 trillion. The upper estimate is 15 trillion.
you can
People like the
forget
Wall
it.
Street Journal, who's hardly a communist organization,
Yeah, but you don't know.
they have criticized you on this as well. You are running up enormous debts.
What does the Wall Street Journal know? I'm meeting with them tomorrow. What does the Wall Street Journal know? They've been wrong about everything. So have you, by the way. You've been wrong about
You're trying
everything.
to turn this. You're trying to turn this.
You've been wrong about
No, you're trying to turn.
The
you're
Wall
trying to turn
Street
this into
Journal.
debate.
Rupert
There are
Murdoch.
It's not a
business
debate.
people. There
No,
are
but you're
business
wrong.
people.
You've been wrong. You've been wrong all your life on this stuff. You've been.
Not
Let me
on the
tell you
issue.
about currency. You're gonna,
All
you're
your
going
life.
jump in a lot
Yeah.
of different subjects.
Whilst you're
The reserve
sticking
currency.
to the subject
No,
very
let's
closely.
stick to reserve currency. That's where you started,
Yeah.
right?
He can't stick on a subject. I mean, right? We're in the late stages of dementia here. Donald Trump, who bankrupted 6 casinos. Casinos. I know it's been said before, but it bears repeating. He's telling this chud across from him, some Wall Street Journal guy, right, that he's always wrong about money. You've always been wrong about money your whole life. You've always been wrong about money your whole life. A guy who bankrupted 6 casinos. They're circle jerking back and forth. The Republican Party, Rupert Murdoch's Wall Street Journal, they used to refer to themselves as fiscally responsible. You know what I mean? And then in only 4 years, right here, in only 4 years, Trump added more to the debt than every single president before him. Not even a full term. And just like these Republicans that pretend that, you know, they're still the party of fiscal responsibility. Rand Paul, right? Rand Paul should go running for the hills. I also know people who pretend, and it's from sheer embarrassment, that they only still like Elon because he's a genius. Elon's a genius. He makes products you don't even know about. He's a genius business inventor. And it was stupid when they said it in 2016. I voted for Trump for economic anxiety. But after those 4 years, adding more to the deficit than all the presidents before him in just 4 years, it just becomes pathetic at this point to anyone without severe brain damage. And honestly, to Mr. I'm just into money and tech. That's all I care about. I separate Elon. I separate the tech business genius Elon away from, you know, his politics. But I guess I'll sign up for a chance to win $1 million to vote for Trump. And if you really are in it, just for the business, just for the money, just for the tech, well, I got one tip for you from Elon Musk. You could be just as successful as him. You could be just as successful as Trump with this one hot tip on how to make money. All you need to do is be born into a family in South Africa, apartheid South Africa that exploited black labor. Have them send you over to America. Start buying up tech companies where you can LARP as a genius. There it is. There's Elon's book. But make sure you follow this very specific formula, especially the generational wealth. Otherwise, you'll end up like Marcus here, selling wallpapers for $60, like it's 1998. Buy some wallpapers for your Windows 95. It only works this way. So there you go. And surprising enough, I'm not a billionaire. Crazy, right? I know. But I imagine when there's literally nothing left to buy, including the votes aforementioned. I'm sure Federalist Society Merrick Garland is looking into the legality of a guy literally giving millions of dollars for votes. I'm sure the party that's been talking about billionaire George Soros buying democracy for the past 30 years, I'm sure they're pretty upset about it. Let me check. Nope, they're not. Buy some wallpapers for $60. And, Elon says as much in this tweet right here. I mean, he didn't write it himself. He screen capped someone else's meme because the world's smartest man couldn't come up with something like this on his own. When you've beaten the entire game, maxed out all your stats, and decide to go back and do the low-level side quests. Low level, right? That's what we had the McDonald's episode last week. Elon Musk beat whatever imaginary game this is on easy or like super easy, special mode, right? Daddy completely set him up, sent him to every prep school imaginable just so he would get into an Ivy League school. I mean, both of them in this pick. Even the guy he's referencing, both of them were set the game to easy. And he takes a job thousands of people rely on to live in this country. And what does he call it? A low-level side quest. I mean, this will help you understand how they think of the plebs in this country. How a chud who grew up with literal slaves in the house views human beings and what their purpose are. So in their brain, when there's nothing left but low-level side quests, Thiel, Elon, both immigrants with a God complex. Think about that. They're both immigrants, so they can't run for president. And honestly, the total sum of these two combined, their personalities, I think that's holding them back more than the Constitution from being president. Their personalities added together equals one J.D. Vance, for those of the people that want to do the math.
Which I realized I deleted, which is like nobody's even bothering to try to kill Kamala because it's pointless. What do you achieve?
No,
it's totally right. Another puppet. Nobody's trying to kill Joe Biden. Some people interpreted it as though I was calling for people to
of course.
assassinate her. But I was like, no, even. I was like, doesn't it seem strange that no one's even bothered to try?
Third time he explained it. Good stuff, right? Jokes are always best when you have to describe why they are jokes. Why you have to describe why they are funny. Those are considered the trove, the golden trove of jokes. And if you want to go to a video game meme, oh look, it's one I made that he could steal. If you want to go to a video game meme, Elon picked all looting, right? Zero charisma, zero willpower. Besides having a God complex, right? Besides being ineligible to run. Besides having zero personality. Something happened to Elon Musk. Something profound, right? Gavin Newscomb has... as Trump likes to call him, has known him for 20 years.
I've known Elon for over 20, 25 years, one of America's great entrepreneurs and innovators. But this is not the person I knew even 2 years ago. And I, with respect to Elon, I just don't have the confidence that there's other things that he's not up to behind the scenes, not just, again, what he's expressing quite publicly. And I'm very concerned about a country where people like Elon Musk, others that are sucking up to Donald Trump, that will undoubtedly be carved out of regulations, undoubtedly get massive, even larger federal contracts. I mean, it is an American oligarchy that can be formed 100%. Here. It's, again, very, very serious.
100%. Now, look, this isn't a conspiracy channel. Unless someone brings up Avril Lavigne, right? All right? Or Ivana's grave. Then it turns into a completely conspiracy channel. But this lady right here, Ghislaine Maxwell, she went out and got the girls for Epstein. She's a groomer. And it's presumed she's still talking to the feds about everything that's happened. Not a conspiracy channel, but around the time period when Elon went full hard right was when Ghislaine Maxwell went into custody. And the icing on top of that, P. Diddy actually helped Elon pay for Twitter because the two were friends. Elon went to his parties. The one thing Epstein proved to this group of people, an American oligarchy, the one thing he proved was that billionaires could lose everything. Even the richest man in the world. It took a decade for Epstein to finally lose it all. But he proved they could lose it if they have certain illegal, disgusting tastes. Losing your billions and losing your freedom is enough to make you not care about an electric car company anymore, right? I'm just not a conspiracy channel, but what does Tucker Carlson always say? I'm just asking questions, right? All right, I'm going to use it once then. I'm just asking questions. It's all kind of happened around the same time. Moving right along. I believe it's in the YouTube manual. This is the YouTube manual that I'm reading right now. I believe it's in the YouTube manual that I need to talk about whatever the title of this episode is. So I imagine future MJ titled this episode something with accelerationism in it. So let's get into it. Accelerationism is a provocative idea that calls for speeding up capitalism and technological advancement to create radical change, either to collapse the existing system or to transform it into something new. J.D. Vance and his buddy at the top of the series, at the top of the episode, and also Curtis Yarvin. This is exactly what they're talking about. How do we change the system without having to vote for people? You accelerate late stage capitalism. You accelerate capitalism to hyperspeed so it folds in on itself, and then you can replace it with whatever system you're trying to implement. And you know who came up with this idea? You know who came up with this method? This guy right here. His name's Karl Marx. He invented Twitter. Marx was one of the first proponents of accelerationism. Even though he never called it that, he believed that capitalism contains internal contradictions that would eventually lead to its own collapse. And as someone who's living through, along with you, these late stages of capitalism, I don't think that's too much of a stretch for any of us, right? I mean, look at this guy. This is where we are, the world's richest man. Marx argued that as capitalism develops, it creates crisis of overproduction, alienation of labor, and inequality, which push the system to its limits. Marx's view was that these contradictions would grow more severe over time, leading to the system's self-destruction and paving the way for a new economic order. Now, the economic order Marx saw was communism. Marx believed that capitalism was historically necessary for developing the productive forces, the technology, the infrastructure, and methods of production that could ultimately support a social society. He acknowledged that capitalism's innovation and productivity were crucial to reaching a stage where society could achieve abundance. Basically, you go through all this hyper-capitalism that we go through, pulling up your bootstraps, working at McDonald's, not Trump, normal everyday Americans. You accelerate your way through that to get to a better system, but then to have the infrastructure to support that system. In a sense, Marx was advocating for allowing capitalism to develop fully to create the conditions that would eventually allow for its overthrow. Hey, that's what I just said. This resembles an accelerationist perspective in that Marx saw the rapid and unchecked growth of capitalism as a necessary precursor to revolutionary change. Basically, accelerationism can be summed up the way I feel about YouTubers. This guy right here, right? Speed them up! Speed them up so we can get rid of them faster. There's a horseshoe theory. Horseshoe. It's not related to the Nobel Prize, so don't worry. We don't have to go back to that. It's not related to that. It's not related to hand grenades. Hand grenades and horseshoes. You only have to be close. The political horseshoe theory is one that I never used to subscribe to. But as I've gotten older, gotten some hair on my butt, I don't know. Is that what people say about getting older? I've started to subscribe to it a little more. I've started to like and subscribe to the political theory of the horseshoe. And it states the extreme left and the extreme right wrap around. And they become closer to each other than the moderates from each party. It's basically the plot to Pretty Woman. What? It's basically the plot to Pretty Woman. An unchecked billionaire, Richard Gere, is in town draining some mom and pop, right? Screwing him over. Julia Roberts is she's the proletariat. She's making money off that poon because minimum wage has been outpaced by inflation for 50 years. Don't ask this guy to help. This guy working at McDonald's, he's not going to help you.
So you chose this as your profession?
Worked at a couple fast food places.
Like Trump.
Parked cars at wrestling.
Trump was inside.
I couldn't make the rent. I was too ashamed to go home.
She couldn't make the rent and she was too ashamed to go home. And there is one more character in my pretty woman metaphor here. And the third character is inside Richard Gere's butt. A hamster named Steve Bannon, using Twitter to divert blue-collar chuds away from the extreme wealth that Richard Gere is making in this movie by sealing the deal. I'm not talking about with Julia Roberts. You know, the hamster in Richard Gere's butt, Steve Bannon, is using white nationalist talking points on Twitter to radicalize the people that Julia Roberts was parking their cars at wrestling events, right? To radicalize them with Christo-fascist nationalism. And don't question my metaphor. There was a guinea pig, I guess a hamster. Guinea pig's probably way too big. There was a hamster in Richard Gere's butt in that movie. It's in the credits if you don't believe me. And if you think I'm reading that movie wrong, I'm trying to apply it to something that it should be applied to right now, well, you need to educate yourself on mise-en-scène.
Point out the obvious, but you are in fact a hooker, and you are my employee. You don't...
I mean, right? In some form or another, using different words, we've all had that conversation at work. You are in fact a hooker, and you are my employee, so you're gonna do what I say. So the question you might be asking yourself right now, the question you might be pondering, is how did J.D. Vance get connected with straight up Marxism beliefs? It's time to introduce another character. A British philosopher named Nick Land made the Land Bridge, the Bering Strait, if you will. Here it is. It connects Russia and the USA. Come on, that's pretty good. That's a grade A metaphor. I'm talking about communism to the United States. A land bridge? The last guy's name is Land? What do you want from me? This is an hour-long episode. The only thing that's going to keep us chugging along at this point are Steve Bannon butthole hamsters and land bridge metaphors. So settle yourself in. Land is known for his role in developing and popularizing right-wing variants of accelerationism. Land was a key figure at the University of Warwick in the 1990s, where he was associated with the Cybernetic Culture Research Unit, the CCRU. Sounds high-tech, sounds cool, sounds like a Cybertruck. An experimental group that combined philosophy, cybernetics, Cybertrucks, literature, and science fiction. The CCRU was a hub of avant-garde thinking, exploring the intersections of technology, culture, and the future of humanity. Land's brand of accelerationism advocates for fully unleashing the forces of capitalism without any constraints. All right? You're starting to learn where these people are getting it from. This new brand. Because unlike left accelerationists who envision using technology and capitalistic progress to create a more egalitarian society, what did he just say? I'll just have Google say it.
Egalitarian.
Land sees unchecked capitalism as a means to drive human and technological evolution. I mean, think about what they've done. What this Trump's Supreme Court has done. Chevron doctrine, gone. Unlimited presidential power. That's what they've given him. There's no legal precedent too big that this hit squad of Trump's. The Supreme Court is Donald Trump's hit squad. There's nothing too big that they won't make disappear for him. So these nerds' fantasies who are cramped in this classroom with Land, they're now becoming the reality we're about to move into, the reality we're about to live in. Land's writings suggest that capitalism is an unstoppable inhuman force that transcends individual interests, driving towards a future that may be beyond human comprehension. It's like, this dude's body right here. He often describes capitalism as an alien intelligence. Right? Not an illegal alien intelligence, because Trump's going to get rid of all of them, but an abstract system that evolves through the accumulation of data and resources. And I think it might be important at this stage to point out a little fun fact about land. I don't like it when people say fun fact anymore. That's run its course. Sorry I said it. Something needs to replace it. But I think it's time to fill in a little color on Nick Land and point out that he was a meth head who ended up in communist China. And from there, he praised their system. Communist, dictator. Get over your dictatorphobia.
The government, they're going to have to get over the dictatorphobia.
The Dark Enlightenment is an essay by Nick Land that lays the foundation for what is known as the Neoreactionary movement, NRX. The essay, written in the early 2010s, critiques liberal democracies and advocates for the return to authoritarian and hierarchical forms of government. Wow! This dude took meth and Karl Marx and came out an authoritarian. I was raised in the meth capital of Utah, Carbon County. And not once did a meth head walk up to me and present a proposal of a dictatorship, right? I mean, the worst thing that happened to me is a bunch of meth heads stole my stereo system. And to this day, I still miss that 20-inch subwoofer. And I hope they got a lot of meth for it, all right? I hope they didn't propose a dictatorship after they took all their meth. But, Starbuckers is never quite the same without my 20-incher in the car. The Dark Enlightenment is Nick Land's critique of liberal democracy. Land sees democracy as inefficient and inherently flawed, preferring meritocracy, right, or a monarch system, where natural hierarchies are recognized and reinforced. Land's concept of the cathedral refers to the ideological apparatus that enforces liberal norms, and he proposes a patchwork of competitive, autonomous states as a way forward. At this point, and if you're a subscriber to this channel, you've probably heard about the Neoreactionary movement. Basically, the right has adopted it. From the Nazis, the alt-right, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Peter Thiel's monkey on a string, J.D. Vance, they all consider themselves neo-reactionaries. And I just told you where it comes from, what the belief structure is. But Land didn't coin the term, unfortunately. Too busy doing meth. But he planted all these seeds. And do you know who coined the term neo-reactionary movement?
There's this guy, Curtis Yarvin, who's written about some of these things.
JD's boyfriend, Curtis Yarvin. Back to the man in the woods. Back to the get over your dictatorphobia. Curtis Yarvin was also known by his pen name, Mencius Moldbug. And it's no wonder how this guy right here arrived at that name. Slipped off a pair of his underwear once after 3 weeks of intense World of Warcraft binge. I don't know. This keyboard fascist here looked down into his underwear and wondered what those were. Mencius Moldbugs. A rare, apt, self-aware name for, one of these chuds. Yarvin coined the term cathedral, right? After reading up all of Land, the meth head. And he used it to describe the alliance of academia, media, and the bureaucratic institutions that promote and enforce progressive values. He believes that the cathedral is an ideological apparatus that ensures the survival of liberal democracy, but that its influence is ultimately unsustainable, right? The other place you can find all these writings, all these ideas, ripping out tumors, media, academia, is in Project 2025. And without all of Yarvin's jack-off talk, he wants education, the free press, and qualified individuals to be removed from government. Like I said, Project 2025. Yarvin aims to accelerate the process of disillusionment and delegitimization of democratic institutions. Are you guys starting to see where this modern push in the Republican Party is coming from? This is Elon, this is Thiel, this is J.D. Vance, this is Steve Bannon. These are the books that they've been consuming. These are the ideas they're pushing. By doing all this, Yarvin aligns with right accelerationist principles, which often involve undermining existing power structures to make room for a fundamentally different social order.
The government, they're going to have to get over the dictatorphobia.
You have to get over your dictator phobia. I mean, just think about where your average Republican, where your average Chud starts off when they start to get their news, right? Twitter. Elon Musk. He has hundreds, I think he has $240 billion, right? He could buy a company. This seems a little anti-capitalistic to me, but he could literally buy a company for $40 billion and never has to make a profit from it. Instead, it's turned into a complete propaganda distribution service. All that's on Twitter, it's propelled with bots and AI. That's all it is. If you've left Twitter, don't go back there. I'm telling you right now, but anytime I show you guys, it looks just like this, right? Anytime I scroll through the For You page, I don't follow any of these people. Nothing but right-wing propaganda. Twitter is a biosphere around the morons and techno-fascists, that they need to use. They need to use these people. Like I said to people before, I like to separate the scientist Elon from the political Elon. Okay, moron. He's using Twitter to literally tear down the very institutions that protect you. And after they tear down this democracy, this democratic republic, what do they plan to replace it with? Well, J.D. Vance's favorite guy, Dictatorphobia guy, Curtis Yarvin, he proposes neocameralism. I don't know if I said that right, and I don't care, because most of the time I just read it. I've never actually tried to say it out loud. As an alternative to modern democracy. In this system, the state is run like a corporation, like we saw earlier. It's basically his speech. With the CEO, that's the dictator, the leader, and shareholders. Now, I want you to remember about these shareholders, because he calls them stakeholders. They will profit from its efficiency and success. This model emphasizes meritocracy governance and is designed to maximize the efficiency and stability of the state. Calls for a radical transformation of government structures. Abandon democracy altogether. We're not a democracy, we're a republic. I have a little info for you, big brain. Big brain who always says that. A republic is a form of democracy. Go read another meme. Abandoning democracy altogether in favor of a more hierarchical and technocratic system. Is some of this starting to make sense to you now? Why they talk like that? Why they push the things? Why a guy who, was beloved by liberals 8 years ago, Elon Musk, they were buying up his cars. Why he would sacrifice all that to join with a guy who thinks, electric boats shock sharks to death or whatever soup brain said about that. And the morons with 1776 on their sleeves, the morons with that, now support a meritocracy. And why do they support a meritocracy? Mostly because they have no idea what that word means. 1776. And the shareholders in this scenario that are talked about, those are your American oligarchs. Just looking at this past month, I mean, you just have to go back this month, right? It should be obvious the president we will have in the next 1 to 2 years will be J.D. Vance. I mean, how much more time do you think a brain that talks about Hannibal Lecter and Arnold Palmer's huge cock have left, right? And it's obvious to anyone who watched Trump dance for 39 minutes instead of answering questions at a town hall, right? It's obvious to anyone who's even seen him this past month that the next president in the 1 to 2 years after Trump is elected will be J.D. Vance.
This guy, this is a guy that was all man This man was strong and tough, and I refused to say it, but when he took showers with the other pros, they came out of there, they said, oh my God.
You know what I mean?
That's unbelievable. I had to say it.
The dude's brain has become soup. In the next 1 to 2 years, whatever J.D. Vance pushes this old fart aside, right, takes the presidency, he will put into motion a system of government based on the writings that a meth head stole from Karl Marx. And if that sounds like a conspiracy to you, I mean, just think, Peter Thiel marched Vance into Trump's office, right? Knowing that this 78-year-old dementia patient, have I told you how big Arnold Palmer's cock is? Yeah, you have, Donald, but here's your vice president. Otherwise, I cut off the money.
So what I'd say is, look, I try to be a humble guy. I think the presidency is, of course, such a big job. I feel extremely confident. I mean, hell, Donald Trump is healthier than I am. So I feel extremely confident that Donald Trump is going to serve and serve well for 4 years for the American people. And
Donald Trump is healthier than I am. Now, either JD here has full-blown AIDS and has about a couple months left to live, or he's assuring you of that because he has to drag McGirdle here over the finish line in like 9 days. And here's JD's handler, right? Peter Thiel.
1980s Reagan coalition question. I always like to ask people where you had this, the Reagan coalition was somehow the free market libertarians, the defense hawks, and the social conservatives. And so if you ask, what does the millionaire and the general and the priest, what do they actually have in common? We just sort of imagine these three people are seated at a dinner table and they're having dinner, and what do they actually talk about? And it's really hard to come up with an answer, and yet the coalition worked incredibly well. And the answer I submit that they have in common is they're anti-communist.
Wow! These guys are all geniuses. In the 1980s, Ronald Reagan told Americans to worship money. During that same time period, Ronald Reagan folded the extreme right Christians into the base of the party. The 1980s, by all metrics, was an accelerationist era. Trickle down is an accelerationist wet dream. It's a tool to create this American oligarchy. The stakeholders, as Peter Thiel believes. So in the genius, second smartest man alive, where does Peter Thiel rank as the smartest man alive? In his stupid joke that he thinks is profound, and I imagine stupid people think it is profound, that would constitute the millionaire and the priest, right? The Reagan era. Why they're part of that. Why they're part of it. But I think you got the generals wrong. Because the generals would be sprinkled in over the next 3 decades to reach both the millionaire and bomb brown non-Christians for the priest. A millionaire, a priest, and a general walk into a bar, and they destroy democracy. And the only punchline of that joke are the morons who cheer it on. The switch that is happening is obvious, right? Elon, Thiel, Trump, they're taking Reagan's worship of the dollar. Republicans' worship of the dollar. And they're supplanting themselves in its place. Don't worship the dollar. Worship those who hold the dollar. I only like Elon for his science and business takes, not the political. The lie the Chuds tell themselves is that the wealth of the American oligarch can be achieved by them. You know? But when they don't have that, the only thing they're left to do is worship the ruling class and create a false feeling, a false sense, a self-reassuring sense that they are somehow on this team with the American oligarchs, with the billionaires in this country. And I think it is here where we start to understand how an ideology taken from a meth head who stole that from Karl Marx. I don't know if you know this about Karl Marx, but he was a Marxist. So there you go. Today you learn how that became the cornerstone of the modern day Republican Nationalist Party. Do you know how Thiel has made a chunk of his money? Let's talk about the PayPal mafia for a minute, all right? Peter Thiel was born in Germany. He's an immigrant. He started PayPal with Max Levchin, who was born in the Soviet Union. His name is spelled with whatever this is, all right? I don't speak Russian. I'm not Tim Pool. I'm not Benny Johnson. I don't have to cash my checks, my Russian checks. Elon, Thiel, Max Levchin, they are the good immigrants, the white immigrants. None of them can be president. None of them can be the CEO, as they like to call it, at least not in the historical United States Democratic Republic way. Don't worship the dollar. Worship those who have the dollar. Elon has been, like a performance art exhibit for these past 6-8 years, exposing that billionaires can be terminally online chuds with perpetual incel energy. I mean, they flock to him. Look at it. One of Elon's favorite retweets is this chud. He's never even set foot in the United States, and he became popular on Twitter only because he's never set foot in the United States, and never set hands on a living, breathing woman. Probably a dead woman, but, just speculation. Happy Halloween. Miles Eon Chong, whatever, is a reflection of what Elon Musk would be without that apartheid South African money propping him up. He would still be the kid who was bullied for those 18 years, right? By everyone, like I said. But with $1 billion, even this edgy, careful not to cut yourself on his tweets because he says the quiet parts out loud. That's what he writes in his thing. I say the quiet parts out loud. How brave of you online to say the quiet parts out loud. Don't cut yourself on that edge. Which I assume is just the N word. But he is a reflection of Elon Musk. $1 billion, this reflection of Elon Musk. If he had it, Elon Musk could get laid. Elon literally falls for a new conspiracy theory every day. I mean, he retweeted End Wokeness lie about Haitians eating cats.
In Springfield, they're eating
it made it
the
all
dogs,
the way to this.
The people that came in, they're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening
I'm going to hook you
in our
up because
country.
this is a super long episode, assuming you're still here. I mean, you'd have to be, right? Schrodinger's cat, if you quit watching. I don't know. Let's not get into that because, like I said, it's a long episode. So I'm going to hook you up with who Ed Wokeness is. Ed Wokeness is Jack Posobiec. Ed Wokeness, Elon's favorite account to retweet is the Pizzagate guy. That's who he is. Charlie Kirk show guy who says he won't fly if there's a black pilot. And how I found this out is I watched this guy try to sell me crap for 10 minutes before he would just tell me who it was. So I watched that video, a ton of his ads, a ton of him just trying to sell me crap. 10 minutes later, he finally told me who it was. So there you go. That's who Ed Wokeness is. Peter Thiel made $6 billion by exploiting retirement accounts for the middle class. Right? You can only put $6K in it a year into a Roth IRA. It's tax-free. It's made for you. It's made for me. It's made for our retirements. It's not made for Peter Thiel. Pretty Peter here who killed his boyfriend. He put $6K in each year. And with insider trader knowledge, also illegal, bought stock in companies for 0.000000001% of a penny, right? Kind of fishy. And then when those companies went public, the price of them shot up because, big surprise, he had insider info. And now his Roth IRA has $6 billion in it of tax-free money. And to show you just how trained they are, how much in a cult they are, the brokest Republicans I know will praise this move. A move that exploited something specifically designed for them. Don't worship the dollar. Worship those who have the dollar. As forementioned, and still, however deep in this episode we are, I'm still not a billionaire. But I can understand how detached one becomes when money is no longer an issue. $40 billion for a platform just so we can hear the deep thoughts of a cat turd. A cat turd who would not keep his word. A cat turd who was deterred. Curtis Yarvin, they see themselves as saviors in what they believe is the fourth turning. Hey, let me open that YouTube book again. Oh, look, I think this is the second part of my title. Unless future MJ decides to change it. The fourth turning. Jesus Herbert Christ, this is a long episode. Almost as long as Arnold Palmer's cock. The fourth turning. The fourth turning presents a theory that history unfolds in reoccurring cycles of approximately 80 to 100 years, known as secula. Each seculum is divided into 4 distinct periods or turnings, each lasting around 20 years, which resemble the seasons of a year. Before we get into this, I read this book like 20 years ago. Yes, I'm old. A long time ago. And, you know, it taps into just history repeating itself and human behavior, and then kind of works backwards. Also, this book is used by people like Steve Bannon, which I'll show, to push fascist ideology. So there are some things I think the book gets right, but for the wrong reasons. Let's start in the fourth turning to kind of explain what sets it off, what resets it. This is a pivotal era of upheaval that fundamentally reshapes society. Major wars or other transformative events occur. The old institutions are destroyed while new ones are created. This period ends with society emerging with a renewed sense of unity and directions. All right? Several fascists on the right, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance, they all believe that's where we're at, right? We're the fourth turning. Society's about to fall apart. That's what they're trying to accelerate. And then after that comes a post-crisis period of stability, collective optimism, and institution building. This is where they will be building their institutions. You've got to get over your dictatorphobia. Society is united and focused on progress, emphasizing conformity and collective purpose. And what they don't really understand or really ever go into crazy, I mean, the author does, but the right never does, is these people are like this because they just came out of a major war. It's always a major war, right? World War II, let's just say that. They never want that to happen again because it's touched them, it's touched their family, it's touched their friends, it's touched their children. So in America, the high was the 40s and 50s. The high was the 40s and 50s when billionaires, I guess there weren't billionaires back then, when the top 1% were taxed 90% of their income. That was the high. But it's not going to be that way when we get into the next high. So after that comes the awakening, a time of cultural or spiritual upheaval, challenging the values established during the high. Individualism rise and people question the establishment. Social norms often leading to reform or countercultural movements. So like the 60s, the 70s, the hippies, right? All in kind of 20-year increments. The third turning is my childhood. And the third turning is the 90s and the aughts, right? The early 2000s. Up until 2008. This is a period of declining institutions, fragmentation, and growing discontent. Individualism peaks and social order weakens, leading to a sense of uncertainty and a lack of cohesion. Oddly enough, this isn't marked by September 11th by Neil Howe, but instead, Bush's economic crash that Obama had to spend the first 2-3 his whole entire first term fixing. So the economic crash kicked off the crisis. So here's the guy who wrote the book, How, on this Chud's podcast, PBD. Paul is balls deep. I think that's what it stands for. Let's listen to what he has to say.
If a civil war and that kind of pain and fear, that event needs to happen for us to get in line with the right values and principles, if that's a level 10, okay? If that's a level 10, where are we at right now?
Look, we used to be at 2 or 3. I think we're now at 6, and we're rising.
And so 6. And do you think, according to your studies of the fourth turning, it has to get to a 9 or a 10?
It has to. And the social social dynamic inevitably leads there in order for the thing to be resolved. 6. In other words, it keeps moving in that direction. And it's accidental within the fourth turning. Civil War. Barbara Welter, did this recent book. She toured the world, reporting on civil wars all over the world today, from Biafra to Burma and, everywhere. She said the one universal thing that she had from everyone she interviewed is she says, they all say the same thing. We never saw it coming.
Well, this time we'll see it coming. And to further poke holes, I'll go through what he says have been the past fourth turnings, right? He kind of worked backwards. Once he figured out 80, 100 years, he just kind of cherry picked. So the War of the Roses, he starts with that, 1859 to 1487. And there's a great movie with Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner that goes over the War of the Roses. Oh my God, how old have my references got? The War of the Roses was a series of English civil wars fought between the House of Lancaster and York over control of the throne. Basically, Game of Thrones. Then he goes to the Armada Crisis, 1569 to 1594. The Spanish Armada. Glorious Revolutions next, 1675 to 1704. King James II got overthrown. And that's going to be repeated this year with the Lakers, with King James and his son Bronny. King James II. And then, of course, we get to the American Revolution. The American Revolution, where the 3% of the penis gets its name from. 1776. Took their name from a lie. How appropriate, right? The group's name derives from an erroneous claim that the active forces in the field against the king's tyranny never amounted to more than 3% of the colonists during the American Revolution. How apt for chuds to name themselves something fake about history that they read on a meme. From the Revolutionary War, we go up to the Civil War, 1860 to 1865. Of course, the Civil War.
Lincoln was probably a great president, although I've always said, why wasn't that settled? You know, I'm a guy that it doesn't make sense. We had a civil war.
Well, half the country left before he got there.
Yeah. But you'd almost say, like, why wasn't that? As an example,
Why did we have to have a civil war? That right there is a token realizing tokens only exist for tokens to be spent. And of course, the next one was World War II. A war that both Thiel and Trump's father were on the German side. Immigrants! And George W. Bush, the good old days, when we thought the Republicans could do worse, the George W. Bush, he had to kick off the fourth turning for us with his financial crisis. Like I said, the fourth turning just shows that human behavior doesn't ever really change. History repeats itself, you know? We all kind of already knew that. And it's not that hot of a take to point out that, these chuds, in this day and age, they take their little rifles into Starbucks, They drive one town over so they can shoot unarmed losers with the AR-15s. They LARP as freedom fighters out in the middle of nowhere. These type of people are a little too far away from an actual war, an actual tragedy. Like I said, the people that came home from World War II. When they came home from World War II, they weren't like, I'm going to take my gun that I used, in this huge conflict, I'm going to take it into a restaurant with me to show everybody. World War II was a war where, mom didn't have a special vegan dinner waiting for her 32-year-old jobless son after he tried to overthrow an election. Joe Rogan listeners are so uncomfortable in their own skin that they become caricatures in this day and age of what real men were or what real men are supposed to be. These are weirdos that use AI-generated images of Trump covered in muscles. 78-year-old Trump, who this week ducked out of interviews because of exhaustion. Right? They look at these pictures of him that they have an AI subscription to make, and I don't know, what do? They beat off? I don't know. Weak little men who live on compounds and are shamed about getting bald, having to quit their job because they're taking hundreds of thousands of dollars from Russia to spread propaganda against the United States, pretending they're leaving their job for their family, a family they don't even have. And then you sprinkle a little astrology on top of it. Bam! You got the fourth turning. The fourth turning is used. It's loved by neo-reactionists, right? And fascists. Peter Thiel, Elon. America's favorite butt hamster, Steve Bannon.
And anybody who doesn't have their back, you're either with us or you're against us. Okay, quite simple. This is one of those clarifying moments. And if you want to whine and suck your thumb, go whine and suck your thumb. I got that. There are a lot of people in the Revolution, the Civil War. After a while, it's just too hard. It's so hard. It's so hard. It's just too hard. Is it too hard? Can I pat you on the head and you run out in the backyard and go play? Okay, we're here to work. We're here to man the ramparts. If that's not your deal, I have no problem with that. Some people are cut out for this, and some people are not. And you go back and look at American history.
Here it is.
Every time we've had a fourth turning, it is those people that will sit there and go, this is over when we say it's over. And when we say it's over is when we win.
You're either with us or you're against us. Looks like we caught Steve Bannon a little late in the day on that one. Already a bottle of Jameson in. A bottle of Jameson mixed with piss. Bannon sees the fourth turning as an opportunity for rebirth of Richard Gere's butt. An opportunity to replace the current liberal democratic system with one that is, as we've been talking about, hierarchical, authoritarian. Curtis Yarvin, Mencius Moldbug, J.D. Vance's favorite author, often argues for monetary or corporate-style governments. And they view the collapse brought on by the fourth turning as the perfect chance to reestablish order under an authoritarian system that rejects the principles of modern liberalism. For these guys, the fourth turning outlines the weakness of each generational cycle, right? Describing the unraveling and crisis periods as times when social cohesion breaks down, setting the stage for a restructuring of society. I'm not even going to argue with them on this point. Like I said, the chuds are taking guns into Starbucks to seem like badasses. There's no event in this country that could bring us all together. There's no tragedy that could bring us together. You know what I mean? Social media has rotted out a chunk of this country's brains. Sticking guys like Sticky Steve in your feed every day. I mean, you remember when your parents used to come up to you, they say, hey, little MJ, don't believe everything you see on TV. Now they'll show you a meme they found on Facebook of, the neighbors are eating the dogs. Currently, Sticky Steve is just sitting in a jail cell. He's just baiting. He's just baiting. Man, that's not the word I'm looking for. Well, he is baiting. He's baiting a lot, but he's also biding his time, right? Till he gets out, counting on this J.D. Vance presidency. That for all intents and purposes, as I've described, will be a puppet regime. J.D. Vance has been groomed since he left Yale by Peter Thiel. I made a whole episode on it. Pretty Peter has given J.D. Vance every BS job he's ever had. And honestly, the grooming with Thiel might be more than monetary. You know what I mean? I mean, just from what we know about J.D. Vance, he changed his name 6 times, asked his grandma if he's gay 6 times. Grandma, you think I'm gay? Yeah, you gay. You know what I mean? This guy can't even buy a donut without being a total creeper. He was not destined for a job in politics. Look at it. None of them are. Thiel, Elon. But they have a Trojan blob. There isn't one tragedy in this country that can bring us together. Like I said, there really isn't. Could you think of anything so tragic it brings this country together? It snaps the chuds out of this fever dream of fascism. War, collapse, I know who I want to be in charge. If this is in fact, look, I'm not buying into it, but obviously we are in a terrible place in this country right now. So I'm not calling it the fourth turning, but for this purpose, I'll call it the fourth turning. I know who I want to be in charge if this is in fact happening. And it's not the chuds. It's not the chuds. It's not the American oligarchs who only see us as NPCs in their little world. The Chud Report. If you stayed for this entire episode, thank you for watching the whole thing. If you're new here and you stayed for this entire episode, I would subscribe because they only get shorter from here. This might be the longest episode that's not a live I ever made. But thank you for being here. Thank you for working through this with me. This is something I've been reading into a lot this month to just try to figure out what's going on. I hope it cleared some things up. If you have something to add about accelerationism, Nick Land, Curtis Yarvin, Mencius Moldbug, any of the stuff we talked about, make sure you put that in the comments. And yeah, that's all I got. If you want to support the channel further, you can become a member. I think you can give comments that have money on them somehow. I don't know how you do that. I'm not sophisticated enough, like I said, to have I don't even know what it's called. The thing I need to A Patreon. Anyway, I'm wasting time on an episode that's already too long. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you next time. The Chud Report.
Very, very large system, and it all needs to be destroyed. Fortunately, there's a lot of talented Americans who actually know how to run things and make things work and are generalists. And you can just get these people, put them in a position of responsibility, and have them do their thing. And finally, you need a CEO, and a national CEO is what's called a dictator. It's the same thing. There's no difference between a CEO and a dictator. If Americans want to change their government, they're going to have to get over their dictatorphobia.